You're strong on both days, the days you can't get up and those that you do. Be proud of staying, of being here now, and having empathy for the struggle too. It's a bad day, not a bad life. Good evening to one and all present here. On behalf of the Youth Red Cross Association VIT, I, Yoshita, welcome all of you to our event. It's okay to not be okay. Before getting started with today's event, I would like to introduce our club. YRC is one of the most notable clubs of VIT Vellore, with the motto of service before self. From organizing blood donation camps to performing skits on social issues to our campaign against substance abuse, CASA, we have uplifted our motto every time throughout these years. Even in the pandemic situation, we have been actively conducting several events online to spread awareness about various social issues and working towards the welfare of society as a whole. To brief us about today's topic of discussion, we have Priyanka with us. Over to you, Priyanka.
Thank you, Yoshita. Good evening to everyone present here. In light of Suicide Prevention Month, I would like to welcome you all to our event. It's okay to be not okay. More than 7 lakh people die every year by suicide. Furthermore, for each suicide, there are more than 20 suicide attempts. Suicides are preventable. Much can be done to prevent suicides at individual, community, and national levels. Even in this day and age, mental health is stigmatized, and access to counseling is scarce, especially in underdeveloped and developing countries. We at YRC-VIP, together with Hibiscus Foundation for Social Welfare, strongly believe that this shouldn't be the case. Today's event is focused on breaking the stigma surrounding the mental health and no longer treating it as a taboo. Death by suicide is preventable, and we all can make an active effort to check up on everyone around us. In today's session, we will discuss how one can overcome the hardest of times when all hopes seem lost and still recover. This session will help us realize how we all together can build a more empathetic environment and remind ourselves that it does get better eventually. Over to Yoshita.
Thank you, Priyanka. Today, we have with us Mr. Manoj Dinakaran, a researcher, writer, and public speaker, who is also the project's head officer at Hibiscus Foundation. Hibiscus Foundation for Social Welfare is a youth run and youth led foundation established in 2020, a not for profit organization registered under Government of India. Their primary focus has been to work on mental health advocacy and awareness. They strive to remove the stigma that has shrouded the conversation around mental health and break all stereotypes around it. They believe that mental health therapy should not be a luxury, rather a necessity. Enshrined by their motto, hashtag mental health for all. Mr. Manoj Dinakaran has completed his BTech degree from Shastra Institute of Engineering and Technology and Masters from PSG College of Arts and Science. He has been awarded the Yuvakala Bharati Award. He is a national level debater and conducts skill development workshops. He has co-authored 4 books and his research has been published in Scopus Index. Without any further ado, I would like to welcome Manoj sir on stage.
Thank you, Miss Yoshita, and thank you, VITC, for inviting me to be here with you all and to discuss. So, thank you all. It's okay to be not okay. Toxic positivity, silence, unnecessary sacrifice, pretending that our emotional pain and turmoil doesn't exist. Are these going to help us? By doing these things, we are not helping ourselves, but we are harming ourselves. The best way that one can deal with these kinds of intrusive emotions is to let ourselves feel them and process them safely. This includes sharing them to a loved one or a friend, breaking the taboos and stigma around that surrounds them, and reaching out to a mental health professional. On this note, today, I want to talk about something which is very, very important and often, that goes around like a passing comment without understanding the gravity behind it and often stigmatized topic, suicide. Just going to share my screen now. So let's talk about suicide. So Mr. Yoshita has told a lot about us, the Hibiscus Foundation for Social Welfare. We are a youth-led, women-led, non-for-profit, non-partisan organization focusing mainly on mental health, but we are not just restricted to that. We also go beyond mental health into social welfare, and we take up other topics like human rights, women's rights, the LGBTIAQ plus rights, and much more. So you can reach out to us through any one of the social media handles or website, or you can write to us. So what we do as an organization, as I said earlier, we focus on developing and bettering the society. Some of the projects that we as Hibiscus Foundation offer are pro bono counseling services. The pro bono counseling team started last year around October, and we have been equipped with skilled and professionally certified counselors who are providing counseling to the vulnerable communities, student communities, and whoever wants it, either at free of cost or at sliding scale model. So we have completed over 320 hours of counseling, and with more than 400 clients up until this point. Next, stress-free guided imagery. Guided imagery sessions are group therapeutic sessions that are given as a part of integrative therapies. This happens every alternate Friday with the organization, and it is conducted in two modules. One is for the international standard timing, where we cater it to our international clients and viewers across the world, and one is at the Indian standard timing, which happens every alternate Friday at 7:30 p.m. IST. The next major project that Hibiscus Foundation undertook in accordance with the WHO is the No Tobacco campaign in celebration of the World No Tobacco Day. We conducted workshops on awareness about tobacco and its related products to students across India. We had covered more than 12,000 students across the nation, and we did a lot of researches, and we came up with a lot of insights into tobacco and the industrial tactics that are being used by the industries to to get students to fall into the smoking habit. We hope we have empowered a lot of students through that work. Apart from that, the next one is the Human Rights Project started at Hibiscus Foundation. We have a dedicated legal team that offers legal counseling to whoever feels that their human rights have been violated, and we have had a couple of clients. Next major one that we are very proud to say is the gender equality commitment that we have made with the United Nations Organization's Women's Division and other CSOs. Hibiscus Foundation is a proud Action Coalition commitment member to the UN and the Youth Task Force. We are hoping to cover and bring a lot of insight, research, and workshops for gender equality. We have kickstarted it this year in the month of January, and we have covered about 3 schools for the same. And we do a lot of social media advocacy, so on a lot of different topics, right from mental health to others. So if you're interested, please go and go and reach out to our Instagram handle, so you can see a lot of media advocacy that is going on there. So how are you all feeling today, right? Always before you start doing something, always take a check on yourself and ask the question, how are you feeling today? So before we can get into the workshop, into the entirety of today's topic and the work that we're going to discuss today, I want to tell you that there are certain content warnings and triggers. We will be discussing a lot of content that is heavy, like suicide, death, self-harming tendencies, and others. If you feel uncomfortable at any point of time, or if you feel discomfort, um, please feel free to leave the session, because your mental health is of priority and it is more important than anything else. So do leave if you have to at any point of time. I hope I was clear. So moving on, let's consider these 3 statements, right? I want you to listen to me carefully, and we are going to see them. I can't take care of my cats anymore. And where I'm going, they can't come. Could you please tell me where is the nearest animal shelter? Everyone would be better off if I go away somewhere very far. I know it's too late for me, but can you recommend a counselor for my wife? When you consider all these three statements, what is the one overarching feeling that you can pick off, or do you think if somebody is in crisis, immediately your thought rushes to the third person, who said, "Oh, it's too late for me." It's never too late, but so that it's never too late. So when you see the statement, you might have an alarm going on within you. But what about the other two statements? You might think these are passing comments that the person might not be in distress, but what if they truly are? What if they are at the brink of their existence, that they want to, don't want to continue anymore? So, where are we missing? Where are we missing our clues, right? So, that is where we need to start questioning ourselves. Are we equipped to listen to emotional and other verbal and non-verbal signs that are available to protect and to save a person's life? So, do you know anyone who has committed suicide? In this statement, can you guess what is wrong? There is a very wrong word that has been attached over here. Let me see if someone can put that on the chat for me. I'm looking at the chat. So quickly, if someone can tell me what is wrong over here. The word committed. Why do you think it is wrong? The right way to ask this question is, do you know anyone who has died by suicide? When we use the term committed, you are referring to a felony or a crime. You can only commit a crime, right? You cannot ask someone to, you know, you cannot say someone has committed suicide. Then you are basically putting a person who, you're basically telling that a person who has committed suicide is committing a felony. Suicide is not felony. A person, ends their own life, right? Out of no options that is left to them. So committed is a wrong connotation that is attached to the word suicide, and let's be mindful of it. This is the basis and the beginning of understanding about suicide. And again, a gentle reminder, this entirety of talk is not a crisis intervention or a suicide prevention training. This is basically for us to have a conversation and awareness about suicide. So today we are going to see and understand what suicide is, the myths and facts that are associated with it, the legal aspects to suicide, what are the signs that are there towards suicide, what are the protective factors, and how to help yourself when you are at the low, and how to help a friend when they are at the low. What are the do's and don'ts, the resources that are available, and the way forward. So welcome to the Suicide Awareness presentation. I'm Manoj Dinakaran from Hibiscus Foundation for Social Welfare. So let's talk about what suicide is. When we say the word suicide, often people have this negative connotation that, suicide is something very wrong. You will not, when we try to take it from a religious perspective or a theological perspective, people always say, persons who commit suicide will never reach heaven. Their family, will always suffer, things like that. So what is actually suicide? Suicide is the act of intentionally ending one's own life. Basically, that is all that is there to suicide by definition, you know. So suicide is the intentional act of ending one's life. Why people commit suicide? When you try to think deeply about this topic, a lot of people might come and say, oh, they were not able to cope up with something, they are cowards, they are weak, so they committed suicide. No. People, sorry, I've used the word commit wrongly. attempts for suicide, or try to, or they have died by suicide. People attempt suicide because they are pushed to the brink of their hope. They don't have hope anymore. They are feeling very hopeless. They do not have options, right? Do not judge a person's choices. You do not know what options they had to choose from. People mostly attempt for suicide because they are pushed without any options or choices for them to choose from. They are pushed to that extent, to that very end, to end their own lives. No one attempts suicide because they want to die. Then why do they do it? Because they want to stop the pain. People are in suffering that is eternal for them, that feels eternal for them. And the only way that people who attempt suicide sees is ending their own life. So that is why they commit suicide. It's not that they want to die, it's because they want to stop the pain. And if you are able to alleviate that pain, you can save that person. This is a wonderful quote by Tiffany. And I also want to include this quote as well. Suicide is not cowardly. I'll tell you what's cowardly: treating people so bad that they want to end their lives. When we say that people are being pushed, it's not just they themselves. It's not only the self, it's the society and the environment that they are in. All these factors cause a lot of trauma, a lot of pain and suffering for people that makes them to end their life. So treating people in the right way with utmost respect and with utmost empathy is of high importance. At the beginning of this talk, I used the word committed and then I said it's wrong, right? Using of terms like death by suicide, rather committing suicide, is very, very important. Why is this so? When you are trying to change the connotation of the language by changing and interchanging the terminologies, you are reducing the suffering that is already that is going there, right? Words matter. Talking about suicide in a hopeful and respectful manner can make a lot of difference for people. When you're attaching a lot of taboo, or when you're attaching a lot of negative connotations around suicide, you are putting more and more stress, and you're not getting any form of awareness, or you're not being mindful about it. So by using different terminologies, you can elevate the misconceptions and the taboo that surrounds. So do say non-fatal or made an attempt on his life or her life, right? Do not say the word unsuccessful suicide, right? Presenting suicide as a desired outcome or a glamorizing it, because we need to avoid it, right? Unsuccessful. That's a negative way of putting it. Non-fatal would be the right way of telling it. Took their own life or died by suicide or even ending their own life can be used instead of successful suicide. Again, you are presenting, when you're using the word successful suicide, you are presenting as if it is a required outcome that a person wanted to see. So being mindful by using took their own life or ended their own life, died by suicide, is respectful and better. Again, as I said, died by suicide or ended his or her own life would be better rather than using the word committed or commit suicide, because again, the word commit is associated with crime or sin. People are not criminals, right? People who attempt or who are in that thought process of ending their own lives are not criminals. So by being mindful of that, you can change and provide that positive hope that a person might be requiring. Concerning rates of suicide rather than using a suicide epidemic, because again, suicide is not a disease, right? It is not something that can be transmitted or spread, right? So using the right terminologies and being mindful of the way you are trying to tell it or talk about it would make a huge difference. Another important thing that we need to talk about is suicide and self-harm. And there is a lot of misconception that surrounds this as well. So what is self-harm? According to the DSM criteria, the Diagnostic Manual for Psychological Assessment says that self-harm is formally known as non-suicidal self-injury disorder, NSSID. These are self-destructive behaviors that are carried without any intention of suicide. So self-harm behavior does not necessarily mean suicidal intent. It may mean, right? Um, it can lead to it can be a contributing factor, but it never necessarily means a person who's intent on self-harm does not mean they are suicidal in nature. Why do people involve themselves in suicidal self-harm is because when people who are trying to try to attempt for self-harm are an extreme amount of psychological pressure or pain, right? And moreover, in a state of numbness, they do not feel anything. And for the sake of feeling something, they might try to, resort to these self harming tendencies to feel some kind of emotion or pain to alleviate that numbness. This is one of the hypotheses that is out there. But again, these are very complex things that stretches beyond well beyond the scope of just restricting it to one or the other. So self-harm is non-suicidal, formally known as non-suicidal self-injury. So then what is the difference between suicidal intent and suicidal ideation? Suicidal ideation is a person having suicidal thoughts or thinking about ending their own lives. It does not necessarily means that they are actively planning to end their own life. But suicidal intent, on the other hand, is active planning to end their own life. Why do you need to differentiate these two? Because it's very, very important in understanding where a person is standing. And intervention at earlier stages is very, very important. So self harm does not necessarily mean suicidal intent, but it can be a contributing factor. So let's talk about some of the myths and facts that are associated with suicide. One of the biggest myths about suicide is suicide attempts or deaths happen without a warning. This is not true. The fact is, a lot of people who have survived often say that the intent was direct but never hidden. People show a lot of signs that they are, ideating or they are, intending for to end their own lives. It's more likely that this intention or this ideation was not recognized earlier on. For suicide, for a person to attempt for suicide, it takes a lot of planning, and it takes a great planning happens in great detail. So people who are attempting for suicide show signs, and it is in our duty as the peer circles and mentors and frontline, being at the front line, it is our duty to take care and identify these signs and help the person. So suicide attempts or deaths do not happen without warning. There is always, always, always a warning. Another one is once a person is intent on suicide, there is no way of stopping them, which is entirely wrong. People with suicidal ideas or ideations can be helped. Suicide can be prevented. Suicidal cries can be relatively short lived. So there is something called as the suicidal curve. It starts slowly with the ideation and then it peaks to the intent and then it goes on. The peak about usually lasts for about 10 minutes, where which that the peak lasts for about 10 minutes on an average. There are different studies which says otherwise, there are more time, there are less time, but on an average 10 minutes. And if you're able to help that person elevate and be with them at that person at that specific moment and try to be bring it down, try to bring down that person along the curve, you can definitely help them. So a person once intended on suicide can definitely be helped, given that you are reaching out to the right help immediately. Another very, very misunderstood concept is that you need to be professionally be qualified to avoid suicide. For example, people might say, oh, I cannot intervene. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. But it need not be. You need not be professionally be qualified to avoid suicide. Also, although that exists a lots of training, and you need to equip yourself with a lot of awareness, signs that are associated with it. You need not be professionally qualified to avert suicide. To treat suicide, to help people completely, you need a professional qualification. You need to be a psychologist or a therapist, psychotherapist, or a medical professional. But to avert, you need not. So all you need to know is the signs, the warning signs, and the things that are associated with it, and help the person immediately by referring them to a crisis helpline. Talking about suicide will make a person attempt to suicide or often think about suicide is another myth. Some people feel that, if I go talk about my thoughts, or talk about suicide, I might put the person at risk. I will also push them to think about suicide all the time. Definitely not. Talking about suicide will not make someone attempt for suicide. It's a very wrong misconception. So next one is, making suicidal threats is often seen as attention seeking. It does not mean anything. No. 95% of the time it is not. People who make threats are in distress or may be in distress. And this is not an excuse for us to be complacent. When somebody is making an active threat, try to empathize with them, try to be with them, and try to understand what is happening and get the help that is required there. Now let's talk about the legal aspects that surrounds suicide. So has suicide been certainly decriminalized? Well, yes and no. In some countries, suicide is still seen as a criminal offense. According to 309 section of Indian Penal Code, it criminalizes the attempt of suicide as well as suicide assistance. Section 309 states, whoever attempts to commit suicide or does any act towards commission of such offense shall be punished with simple imprisonment for a term which may extend to 1 year with fine or without, or both. So according to the section 309, a person who had survived, right? Even here in the very statement, you can see they are using the word commit, telling that it is a crime, right? So a person who had survived the attempt of suicide can be booked under section 309, telling that they have attempted for suicide and can be imprisoned. We need to understand that people who are attempting or having the suicidal intent are in extreme distress, and sections like these will not help in any way. It can be detrimental to the person, though these are there for other reasons to protect and others, they also can be very, very detrimental. But recently, according to the Health Act of 2017, Section 115, subsection 1, it says that notwithstanding anything contained in Section 309 of the Indian Penal Code, any person who attempts to commit suicide, again, they have used this, and shall be presumed unless proved otherwise to have severe stress and shall not be tried and punished under the said code. Though the Mental Health Act is a little bit contradictory to the section 309, right? Both these sections are still there. So there is a little bit of complexity surrounding the very topic. There is a lot of debate going around the legality of suicide in India and other countries as well. But what is your opinion on that? Should we legalize it or should we not? Another question that arises is euthanasia and physician assisted suicide, or PAS, around the world. There are two types of euthanasia. Active euthanasia is where a doctor administers a lethal dose of medication to a patient to relieve them of their suffering. And physician assisted suicide, where, or called as passive euthanasia, where the life support or life sustaining system for a patient is being removed so that they are not able to prolong their lives. These two, forms of euthanasia are illegal in most of the countries. However, at least in 8 Western countries like Belgium, Canada, Netherlands, they have legalized one or both of these procedures. According to India, since 2018 March, passive euthanasia is legal in India, given that it's properly applied for through a will and it is suggested by a medical professional, under the condition that the patient is in a vegetative state where they are not able to make decisions for themselves. Only under that condition, under the guidance of a medical professional and the legal systems through a registered will, can one person opt for passive euthanasia, but otherwise it is not. So, what are your thoughts on the legal aspects? Do you think we need a legal exemption in suicide and euthanasia? Or do you think these laws are required to keep in check of suicide? So now we are going into the heart of our discussion. What are the warning signs? It is hard to predict who will attempt suicide. However, there are some urgent warning signs. Warning signs are observable changes, behaviors, or statements that are uttered by a person, which indicate that they are either directly or indirectly the person is in a lot of distress and they are contemplating suicide. What are the urgent warning signs? If you see, right, if you see one of these or hear one of these, talk to a responsible adult right away. And when I say a responsible adult, we are talking about mental health professional, doctors, or even parents for that matter. Call a hotline number or seek immediate help from a mental health provider. When someone is threatening to kill themselves or hurt themselves, please call a helpline or try to ask for help. When someone is looking for ways to kill themselves, like seeking access to pills, weapons, or something. And when someone is talking about or writing about death, dying, suicide in any way that is not typical for them. So these are some of the urgent warning signs. When you see them, please seek immediate help. There are also other general warning signs, and this can be remembered with the acronym FACTS. Some of these signs are not very urgent, but can still give important clues about when someone is having a suicidal intention. Pay close attention to if you see, hear, or know someone who's exhibiting one of these behaviors or signs, and then act immediately upon them. So we want you to act on the facts. So what are the facts? Facts, F stands for feelings. Feelings of hopelessness, helplessness, worthlessness, things like everything will get better, will never get better. There is no point in trying. There is nothing I can do about it. I don't want to do anything or I can't do anything. Everyone would be better off without me and I have no reasons to live. These are some of the feelings that a person who may be suicidal can experience. Other feelings such as shame, guilt, self hatred, pervasive sadness, persistent anxiety or agitation, confusions, and uncharacterized anger or hostility can also be some of the feelings that are associated. So, these are some of the feelings. A stands for actions, uncharacteristic aggression, sudden way of them exploding or rage or seeking revenge, uncharacteristic risk taking, like doing things in a very reckless manner, like driving very fast, suddenly driving very fast, doing extreme sports without thoughts about it, withdrawal from friends and societal activities, becoming very accident prone, telling that I don't care if I die in an accident or something like that. Recent losses like death, divorce, relationship, job, status, and self-esteem can also be a characteristic that you can see. Getting into trouble, increasing drug or use of alcohol, themes of constant talks about themes of death, destruction, etc. on social media or to other people are also uncharacterized actions. So if you see them, act on them. Changes, these are significant things that you can observe in a person, right? Their entire personality changes, like acting opposite of what was usually what they used to do. For example, they might be a very energetic and outgoing person who loved a lot of parties and wanted to do a lot of stuff, but right now they are withdrawing themselves, they do not care about anything, and they move about from everything. It can be also the converse of it, where a very introverted person suddenly comes and talks to everyone and acts in a different manner. So if you see that personality shift, try to engage in a conversation, try to find out if they are feeling okay, ask them if they are okay, right? Not able to concentrate on schoolwork, which is, usually them being a very, very, studious person and, performing well, and suddenly the performance goes down in their school work or routines. Look out for them. Loss of interest in hobbies or work, marked decrease in school or work performance, again, unable to sleep, eat, or sleeping all the time and eating all the time, sudden improvement after being down or withdrawn, right? And dramatic mood changes, constant shifts, like suddenly they are feeling sad and suddenly they are feeling happy. All these changes tell that there is something beyond these emotions and changes that one person has to look out for. Threats are direct way of information. Statements talking about suicide directly or indirectly, written themes of death or preoccupation with death, like I will kill myself, I won't be there much longer. Telling these kinds of words are direct, and that it informs us that the person is actually in distress. And plans, making elaborate plans like giving away prized possession, writing a will, making other arrangements for, to take for the next person to take over, studying the effects of drugs or obtaining a weapon suddenly out of the blue. All these can mean something much more deeper. So that is the facts. So act on the facts. Next, I want to talk about potential risk factors, right? What are the risk factors that can cause a person to attempt for suicide or contribute towards suicide are prior suicidal attempts, misuse and abuse of alcohol and other drugs, unemployment or being fired from their job, right? Being recently divorced, separated, or widowed, social isolation, traumatic events or abuse, lack of access to behavioral health care, mental health care, chronic mental illnesses, and chronic diseases, physical illnesses, right? So when we talk, there are so many risk factors, but you can't say if a person is having one of these risk factors, they are suicidal in nature. We need to understand these are potentiating risk factors. They may lead to an attempt for suicide, but they are not directly linked to, right? Suicidal risk factors vary with age, gender, ethnic group, family dynamics, genetics, and even stressful life events. But having a look out for these non this is not an exhaustive list, yet having a look out for these potentiating risk factors is very, very important. So what are the protective factors? Look, all this time we were talking about what contributes and what can lead to suicide and what are the other things that are associated with suicide, but how do we protect or try to reel away from suicide? Protective factors are personal or environmental characteristics that helps people protect themselves from suicide. These factors contribute to each person's unique reasons for living. It can be a personal thing, but it keeps the morale high. It gives them a sense of purpose or make them feel hopeful. So protective factors can be anything that can make you feel better. Major protective factors for suicide include effective behavioral health care. You taking care of your mental health is very, very, very important. Connected to individuals, families, communities, and social institutions, making yourself as a network or being in a network of individuals who are positive and are supportive towards to you, right? That is very, very important. Learning life skills, including problem solving skills and coping skills, and the ability to adapt for change. Right? It can be anything, how to manage with stress. It can be other things like problem solving skills, when I'm not able to make a decision. Should I use a different approach to this, or should I use a cost benefit analysis? Learning techniques, life skills that can help you problem solve or cope is very, very important. Developing your self-esteem and a sense of or a purpose for meaning of life is also very, very important. When you have a purpose to commit to, or a self-esteem that is very high towards yourself, you'll be able to protect yourself. Cultural, religious, and personal beliefs also contribute as protective factors, but they can be also detrimental at some times. So we need to be very sure and very, very confident about which ones to have and which ones not to. Again, we talked about life skills, right? Life skills are key protective factors for suicide and include critical things. It can include a lot of things like critical thinking, stress management, conflict resolution, problem solving, and coping skills. Learning a life skill, even when you are non-suicidal, at times when you're non-suicidal in nature, is very, very important, because these are the ones, the stress that are associated with our day-to-day life is what pushes us to the brink of the end of our hope. Activities that enhance these skills can help us protect as they face new challenges, such as economic stress, divorce, physical illness, and aging. Things like these help us to develop a better way and, an active mechanism to cope up with intrusive thoughts. So now let's talk about how to help oneself. What do I do when I am having such thoughts? Remember and remember and remember, suicide prevention is possible. There is no end, right, to possibilities. Suicide can be prevented at all times, most of the times. So reach out to a friend whenever you are having an intrusive thought. Reach out to a friend or a loved one, even though it might be hard for you to talk about their feeling. I know and I understand it's not easy for us to talk about our detrimental thoughts to someone else, and we might even go into thinking about, what if I hurt them, what if I put them into more stress, why do I want to add baggage to them? But trust me, talking to a close friend who will be able to listen to you and help out to you, or a loved one, can elevate the problem so much, right? And if you're not able to express those feelings or thoughts to someone else, call a suicide hotline immediately, or make an appointment with any healthcare professional. It can be your doctor or a mental health care provider or a counselor that is available in your campus or in your workspace. It can be anyone. So reach out. Reaching out is the first step in helping yourself. Other things. What are the other things that I can do to myself to keep away from intrusive thoughts or getting affected by more number of stress? Is having a coping toolbox. A coping toolbox can be anything that can be physical or mental. For example, I have a coping toolbox right across my room right now that has a bunch of chocolates, some packets of soup, a good book. I love reading book. It can be anything. A coping toolbox is anything that can make you feel safe, that can make you feel happy or ground yourself. Writing down affirmations or trying to think about the reasons to live, having a purpose. I know this one can be a little hard, but constantly reminding of ourselves that we have a purpose in life, that we have to move towards to, can help you reduce those thoughts. Distraction techniques like grounding techniques, where you try to ground yourself, moving away from that specific thought, can help a lot. Some of the grounding techniques are simple as breathing techniques that you can learn about. Two of the most popular ones are the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding technique. You can Google it, and it's a very, very easy technique. Learning these grounding techniques can help a lot. Other distraction techniques include listening to music, or going out for a walk, anything that can distract you from that specific thought. Coping mechanisms, or sometimes called as personalized rituals, and I call it as personalized defaults. Having these coping mechanisms, a daily routine, can help you to get into an autopilot mode when you are having those intrusive thoughts. For example, I have a very, very rigid routine. I wake up early at morning 5:30. I have my yoga group where we sit and meditate as a group, and then we do some exercises. Then I have my breakfast and it goes on. I have these rituals, or these very specific rituals. And once I come back home from whatever work that I'm doing, I do sit down with my diary and I do journaling or an affirmation. I never skip these routines any time. And whenever I am feeling low, or when I'm having some sort of a bad day, I kind of continue to do those rituals. So when I'm trying to do these kinds of things, my mind automatically goes into an autopilot mode, right? So having coping mechanisms that can calm you down can help you. So have a personalized routine or a personalized ritual. It can be anything. It can be even going out for a walk, gardening, cooking. It can be anything, but have something that can help you to ground yourself. Meditation, yoga, exercises, guided imageries are relaxation techniques which you can do to relax your body and mind over the week, or over a period of time in a day, constantly, right? So building up stress can contribute towards suicide. And when you actively elevate them through guided meditations or yoga or exercises, hitting the gym or something like that, deviating from the stress can help you ground yourself and avoid these thoughts. So these are some of the techniques. So steps to recovery. So, oh, yeah, before I can go to steps to recovery, let's go ahead. Identify the triggers or the situation that can actually cause you to think or have these negative emotions, right? Try to avoid them actively. It can be a place, it can be people or situations. If you know these are going to be detrimental for you, avoid them. Nothing is more important than your mental health, right? So that is the first thing. Take care of yourself. Eat right. Don't skip meals. This is the general one. Plenty of sleep. Lack of sleep is a contributing factor to a lot of mental health disorders and problems. But when you have a right amount of sleep, right, it can help and make a difference in a lot of our lives. Similarly, exercise physical exercises, when you're tiring out your body and working out those muscles, it releases a lot of hormones that are called as happiness hormones, like endorphin, serotonin. These are very, very useful and helpful in relieving stress and promotes emotional, not just emotional, but the entire of well-being as such. So do the right things, have a routine, or have a personalized ritual. Building a support network for yourself is also very important. Have a group of friends that have a positive influence on you, someone who can reach out to, right? Have that network where you can fall back and get that support. Develop new activities. Do not stay stagnant. Find new hobbies. Do volunteering activities or work that can give you a sense of meaning and purpose in life, right? So when you're doing these and when you're actively seeking out things, you will have different perspectives, perceptions that can help you, change your mind from the monotonous way of living. And it kind of helps you also to relax yourself. So doing these things can be a pathway to recovery. And learn to deal stress with a healthy way. Some people resort to very detrimental way of dealing with stress, right? But find yourself doing some healthy way. Learn some techniques that are simple, that resonates with you. You don't have to stick to something that others are following. You can also create a very innovative, healthy way of dealing. This can include by checking your own mental health, exercising, meditating, sensory strategies to relax. For example, in our organization, as I said earlier, we conduct the stress-free guided imagery sessions every alternate Friday, and a lot of clients, when I do the guided imagery sessions, come and tell me they got knocked out and they felt so relaxed. They felt like they were sleeping like a baby. So some things can resonate for you, and some things cannot. So try to find out at least one healthy way of dealing with your stress, and it can be anything. Now, the golden question: how can I help a friend who is having or who are in crisis? I want you to act on the facts. So we saw what facts was. Now we will see what act actually means, right? Acknowledge that your friend has a problem, right? They are in crisis and that their symptoms are serious. We often brush it off like, oh, they are just kidding, they are just joking, it's just a passing thing, they will feel better soon. acknowledge that there might be something more to it and try to ask them, reach out to them, ask the question, are you okay? Most of the time we fail to do that. We ignore that. That is where the problem starts. We isolate it, we do not see these signs, we do not see, or we talk about it, that progresses gradually. Care about the friend and let them know that you are there and that you are here to support them. You verbally telling those words can make a difference for that person, because when people are ideating or intending about suicide, they feel that they are isolated, that there is no one out there for them to be with them and support them or help them. So you verbally telling those words, that I am here for you, in an empathetic manner, can make a lot of difference for a person. Do not keep quiet. Tell a trusted about your adult about your concern, or take your friend to a trusted adult. Telling the right person can make so much difference. You cannot be there all the time, right? You cannot be there all the time monitoring and offering that help. Sometimes you might not be available, but having a secondary support or being there, having someone else being there can make that difference. So do not keep quiet. Tell a trusted adult or someone that your friend might be in crisis and they need to have a lookout for them. So, suicide prevention, now is possible. It requires coordination and cooperation among individuals like you and me, healthcare providers, family and friends, and the entire community. Prevention cannot be possible if it is only at one level. Where is it? If it is only at with care providers, or if it is only at family or friends, it has to be with individuals. It has to be at the community level as well. Why? To prevent one person from attempting for suicide and getting the right help requires 10 people who are skilled to do that. To save 10 people, it requires 100. To save 100, you need thousands of people. By creating a safe network and creating awareness, you can prevent suicide, and suicide prevention is possible. So, as I said earlier, have a positive social connections, make a safe space, create safe spaces, which is very, very important. Know what the warning signs are. Be alert to the signs of depression and other mental health disorder. Try making yourself aware to what are the other things that are happening in terms of mental health and others. Not just mental health, but also in terms of physical disorders, so that you are able to know if somebody is in distress or not. Identify, or try to know someone better, right? If they have a specific mental health needs, or if they have some triggers that you need to be wary of. So remember all those. Reducing access to lethal means of suicide is also one way you can prevent it. Seeking help or someone else needs at the right time is very, very important. Do not feel bad to reach out, right? Reaching out to another person is never wrong. Reach out. That way you will be able to prevent it. As I said earlier, creating safe spaces where people can talk their minds out, express their feelings as to what they are feeling, just as they are feeling, can help in the path of healing. So these are some of the things. Now, talking about do's and don'ts. So now that you know what are the signs that you need to look out for and immediately refer if you find these signs, there are also do's and don'ts, right? You cannot do some things and you should do some things when you see a person in crisis. Do not invalidate their emotions. Instead, instead ask what they require from you. Listen actively. Do not just simply say, oh, it's nothing, you're probably this is just probably something that is passing, don't worry about it, it will disappear. Listen to them, understand what they are requiring. Don't say, I know how you feel. You will never know what the other person is going through. You are not another person. Your experiences are different from others. Remember that. It is very likely that you do not know how the other person feels. So be empathetic. You can say instead, I can only imagine and I do not know, but I want to let you know that I am here for you, right? So understanding these things is very, very important. Do not say get over it. Depression or suicidal thoughts are not simple, right? You can't just simply say get over it. Can you go tell a person who's having a very serious terminal illness like cancer or something like get over cancer? You can't. Similarly, mental health conditions are such. You can't simply say get over it, do some, do yoga or something, it will get cured. No, it requires processes. It requires help. It requires professional assistance, right? So do not say get over it and invalidate people's feeling. Probably this is also attached with other tags such as gender based perceptions like, oh, you are a man, stop crying. You're a girl, don't be sissy like this. Don't attach tags. It is even more detrimental. You might mean it in a nice, in a nice manner, with positive intent, but saying these words, get over it, it's nothing, you're just overreacting, will be very, very, very detrimental to people. And say, I am here. Listen to the person. We are not asking you to hear what the other person is telling. Listen earnestly to what they are requiring of. Spend some time with people who reach out to you. If you believe that a person is at immediate risk or hurting themselves or others, ask the question, are you okay? And get a helpline number immediately. Do not ignore the warning signs. People living with suicidal thoughts often asks for help verbally or uh, through other means, right? Through other signs. Take the signs seriously. There are a cry for help and take action. You might be the only person who might know. Now that we had this discussion, you might be the only person who knows that these are the warning signs, and you can be the only person who can help that person. And your silence could cost a life. So do not ignore the warning signs. Do learn what they are. Again, avoid misinformation and offer hope. Point them to a therapist or a professional who can help. Become familiar with resources and help the person to take that help, right? You cannot say, okay, now that the crisis is averted, now the person is not feeling suicidal, I think everything will be fine. No, point them out, point them out, because it can always come back. If you feel you cannot ask this person to seek help, then take the steps for yourself and alert the proper people who can help. That way, you are saving a person's life. Do not keep it a secret. As I said earlier, rather talk about it. Even if a person is having suicidal thoughts and asks to keep it to yourself after confiding in you, it's better to get them help rather than to keep it as a secret. If you're not able to talk to their parents, if the family is toxic, or if their immediate surrounding is toxic, at least tell to your friends who can be of support, right? Do not take the burden on yourself. By having a larger network, you are creating more safe spaces and more safe mechanisms for that person to reach out, even if you're not available. So resources, what are the resources? How do I equip myself, Manoj? Now that I have some sort of understanding about suicide and its related things, how do I equip myself? Always have crisis phone numbers on your desks, in your bags, or in your phones. I have a crisis helpline numbers constantly written down, on my desk. I just have this, and keep them at hand, right? Know your friends emergency numbers. If your friend is know a little bit more about them. If you feel that your friend is having some intrusive thoughts, you should know what are the emergency numbers that you can call for. Like, for it can be a sibling, it can be another trusted friend who they are very close to, things like that. Have emergency numbers of others people, especially in a college system or in a hostel system. Knowing emergency numbers, an additional emergency number, comes very, very handy. Get the right mental health resources. There are so many mental health resources that you can reach out to. Know which ones are right, know which ones you can reach out to, and keep reading about them. By educating yourself and creating awareness for yourself, you will be able to keep yourself updated, right? So these are some of the ways you can keep yourself up and updated. So these are some of the crisis helpline numbers that you can call. ASRA and Fortis are, ASRA is a very good helpline number. Um, they provide crisis help in 14 languages, and they are available 24/7. Sneha, Kiran, all do the same. So take a screenshot or something that you can save it later. And yes, so have a crisis number in your phone always, or somewhere you can see all the time, just in hand, right? So what is the way forward? We are at the end of the session. So don't worry, I will not take more time. So look out for direct and indirect verbal cues, right? You need to understand what are the direct verbal cues. For example, direct verbal cues are the ones people tell immediately. I am feeling suicidal. I am going to kill myself. These are direct verbal cues. They are telling it out loud. Indirect ones can be, I'm really tired. I just don't want to do anything. I feel life is hopeless. I don't want to move on. What's the point? These are indirect verbal cues. Understanding the direct and indirect verbal cues and picking them out, in a group of statements can help a person, can help you get an insight that that person might be in distress. Understand, be empathetic, right? There are behavioral cues. We talked about a lot of changes in their character and persona, right? Immediately a person who's being extroverted turning into an introverted character, and the vice versa. So look out for the behavioral cues. If you find something out of the oddity, ask the question. Do not hesitate to ask the question. Are you okay? Are you feeling suicidal? If you can't directly ask a series of questions that can help you better understand a person's mental state. Finally, situational cues. Situational cues often include very traumatic experiences like losses, accidents, so on and so forth. If you know something like that has happened, be there as a support. We are human beings, and our purpose is here to help out each other. So try to reach out to another person. So finally, I take this as a small assessment. See what are the words that stands out in this, right? You can pause here, take a minute, and see what is going on in all these three situations. Are all these three people in crisis? Are they or are they not? So in the first statement, if you see a person is trying to actively know whether taking 5 pills or more is going to kill them, right? In the second statement, they feel that there is no hope. They feel the sense of hopelessness is there. And finally, the person is also feeling extremely fatigued and tired, burnt out, and they are constantly enduring to keep going on. So these are some of the things that you need to pick out. So when you see or hear such kind of statements, be alert and ask the question, are you okay? So what can you do? How can you help a person who is having suicidal thoughts? Actively look for the cues and signs. Know if even if you find one of these cues and warning signs, ask the question and try to look out for them. Get a contract and make sure you get help from them. What is a contract? So suicidal contracts are something that you get a promise of sorts. Okay, if my friend is suicidal in nature, I make him to promise that he will reach out to a mental health care facility immediately to get that help, right? Averting suicide is different from getting the complete help. You need to go through some processes, some changes within you, and that can be facilitated by a mental health professional. So get that contract, make sure that they reach to the mental health professional, right? Immediately after you averting them or helping them to calm them down from that peak point. So get a contract or make sure that they reach that help. Third, when in doubt, always ask the question. Do not hesitate to ask the question, are you suicidal? And if you can't ask that question directly, ask a series of questions. Hey, how are you feeling? Are you feeling okay? Is everything good? Ask a series of questions and try to understand what the person is feeling through, right? And be the change and break the stigma. Often we put a lot of burden on taking mental health help or reaching out to resources, right? Break the stigma. You be the changer. Change cannot happen until and unless you are willing to change. So you be the change and start talking about it. Create awareness about mental health and other things that are surrounding mental health. That way you are breaking the cycle, and you being the next generation who can make that transformative change, you can remove the hurdles that are there for having a healthy lifestyle for the rest of the world. So practice and encourage self-care. A mindful way with a healthy palate and exercise can go a very long way in promoting a good mental health. So what are we doing? Hibiscus Foundation is conducting a lot of workshops on suicide prevention, mental health, and others. We do this on Clubhouse and Instagram Live. You can reach out to us. We have a lot of fun things also going on the side. We do a lot of social media advocacy. Right now, we do an intersectional digital advocacy on gender equality, mental health, menstrual hygiene, human rights, and sustainability for 4,800 individuals. We have committed it. We have also given us a commitment. So, hope you can join us there too by creating your own social media advocacy on all these topics and creating awareness. We provide free medical and psychological services. We have pro bono counseling services, medical consultation, guided imagery for stress reduction, or meditation for women for gender-based violence, financial difficulties, disability, etc., and persons from the LGBTQIA plus community, and for others, for women empowerment and for youth leadership facilitation. We have committed for 400 plus hours, so you can reach out to us at any time. We also provide pro bono legal consultation. Pro bono legal consultation for human rights consultancy for women who have faced human rights violations are available. You can reach out to our legal team and get this assistance. So here's how you reach out to us. So you can write at support@hibiscusfoundation.org, or you can DM us at Instagram, where we are very, very, very active. So that's that. You can also reach out to LinkedIn. There are a lot of opportunities for volunteership and others at Hibiscus Foundation. So that's about it. Thank you so much for staying patient and listening to and having an open discussion about suicide. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. That was very insightful. We will make sure to act on all the facts that we have seen, and we'll remember to look out for any signs and ask for help as soon as possible. Now, I would like to call upon Priyanka to carry forward.
Thank you so much, sir. That was very informative. Now we have some questions from our end that we would like to ask. So our first question is, what role does social media play in the life of a person who's struggling with the mental health?
Right. Social media, in my experience, I see media as a double-edged sword, right? It has both positive and negative sides to it. It can help you get the right resources, like for example, we are trying to reach out to a mental health professional. Social media can be a good platform to reach out to that right kind of help at the right time, but at the same time it can make things worse for a person who's struggling with mental health, mental health struggles. For example, people tend to self-diagnose. Am I depressed? They start googling it out, and then there comes a list of things, and people are able to like identify a lot of things, and they'll be like, oh my god, I'm depressed. But in reality it can be otherwise also. So especially people with dealing with mental health issues, trying to self-diagnose, it can be very, very, very detrimental. There are also other things like triggers and traumatic information that can cause a person to feel uh, very very heavy in terms of emotions. So one has to use this very decisively with care. Mindful content sharing and creating is also required in social media, also in the case of doom scrolling. So for example, it is a happening thing. Even sometimes even I fall victim to it. Like I keep scrolling on my Instagram just randomly, waking up and just scrolling on Instagram randomly. Being mindful that you are scrolling like that, can be helpful in reducing the detrimental effect. So it's a double-edged sword, and we need to be mindful about social media and its effect. Hope I was able to answer that question.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Our next question is, to what degree is peer pressure a factor affecting someone's mental health?
Right. Okay. In my opinion, again, very frankly telling, there is no degree. Peer pressure will have a potential to affect someone's mental health positively or negatively. How? Let's say you have a very close friend and you're feeling very low. You haven't been able to communicate that properly without they without understanding it, you needing some space to process your emotions or otherwise, you know, they come there and try to force you to do things that are not okay with you, right? Can be very, very detrimental in some cases. In a college setting, especially in classroom, bullying or, you know, shaming, fat shaming, or body shaming others can be very, very detrimental. It can also be positive at states where, you know, having a healthy lifestyle when your friends are there to motivate and push you, right? It can be helpful. For example, I have a group. As I said, I have a group. I meditate early in the morning, you know, with them to help me calm down and start my day. If I'm not going to be there in the morning, if I miss my session, right, immediately, so my session starts exactly at 5:30. If I'm not there by 5:35, immediately I'll get calls like, where are you, what is happening? Come, it's okay. If you, even if you can't, you know, do the proper exercises, just stay with us on call, you know, talk to us or something like that. So having that safe mechanism in terms of peer pressure, where positive uh, or a healthy movement or healthy lifestyle or pursuing towards a healthy routine can help. Eric Erickson says personal influences, peers influences identity formation, right? So it entirely depends on the people you are sticking with. Is it going to be positive or negative? You will have to decide. So having a positive peer influence can be helpful. Having a negative one can be very detrimental to mental or someone's mental health.
Certainly, sir, certainly. Our next question is therapy is generally associated with privilege. How can it be made accessible to everyone?
Okay. Yes, therapy is generally associated with privileges, but times are changing, right? A lot of government bodies and other international organizations have recognized the importance of mental health and services that are required, and a lot of inclusivity towards this has been made in policy level changes. For example, I attended the recent meeting, the UN meeting for non-communicable diseases, and mental health was one of the topmost priority. And making sure that there are policy level changes in making resources accessible, right, was spoken about there, and it was emphasized there. And we, as an organization, as an NGO, a mental health foundation, along with few other organizations, have advocated for this, and there is a lot of changes that are happening, right? More and more, but the way the pace at which this is happening is very, very slow. More and more advocacy and inclusion is required, especially for the people who are who are with vulnerabilities, like people with rights of disability, people with who are from the marginalized communities, students, uh, people who identify as queer. You know, there are not many resources that are friendly both economically and socially for them. It's very difficult to find resources in these aspects, right? But things are changing. There is hope. On the other side of the spectrum, there are resources, to be in fair honest, like there are pro bono and sliding scale services, right, where payment you know, professionals are giving free sessions once in a while, which can be availed by a lot of people who do not have access to or economic stability, right? So, including our organization, we provide counseling at free of cost for students or anyone who needs it without any, who needs those free sessions, or at sliding scale where the client can choose to pay how much ever they want, right? So that's why it's called as a sliding scale. So there are resources, but the problem is there is a lack of awareness about these resources. Most of the people, when I have a conversation with college students, they don't even know what pro bono counseling services are. They are not aware about it. So there are resources like these. In most cases, people are not aware of them. So awareness and suggestions to alternative resources must be made accessible to all and constantly updated and shared by everyone, right from college level, where college should have these resources available or a list of these resources available, so that, you know, students can get access to them. So that way, you know, you can make a difference in the society. Right now, therapy is going towards it not being a privilege, and it is becoming more accessible, but the pace is little slow. We have to rapidly change. So yes, hope that was
Absolutely.
okay.
Yes, sir.
Did
So
I do justice?
there are therapies that are free of cost, and then it's just the awareness is a bit less and it has to be spread. So understood, sir. Thank you. Now Yoshita will carry on with the further questions.
Yes, sir. So our next question would be: can making long-term goals will help ease out the immediate stress that we get in our professional life?
Okay. In my opinion, having a long-term goal or not having a one relating to professional life is not going to change anything. For example, let's say I want to become a scientist at my former alma mater, National Institute of Epidemiology, or if I want to become a scientist at WHO or something. That is my long term goal, right? But unfortunately, if I'm not able to make the cut for it, it can become something that will reduce my moral self, and it can pull down my self esteem. So I'm saying, should, am I saying that we should not have goals? Definitely not. I'm telling goals give a direction to life and a purpose, but at the same time, you should make sure that it is a little flexible. We all need goals, right? But not to mitigate the stress. You do not associate goal and say, if I have a long term goal or if I work towards a long term goal, I can avoid the intermittent stress that is happening right now, right? That should not be the one. Stress has to be dealt in a right way, right? Reaching out to a mental health professional or a counselor is a very good choice, right? Having a personal self-care routine, as I talked about earlier, can help reduce your stress a lot, not your goals. You can't just have more goals or changing your goals and think that stress can get reduced if I have a different goal. Goals are highly subjective. It may work, it may not work out for all, right? It has to do with psychological flexibility. So having a good, healthy coping mechanism that works for you will help you reduce stress rather than goals. So, okay. Yes.
So definitely, everybody's got to have their own plans at their own paces, different paces. Not everybody things work for everybody. So what
And as I
happens when
said,
a person?
and as I
Yes, sir.
said earlier, every individual is unique. You cannot say, goals are something like a cookie cutter templates. So trying to copy or imitate goals cannot work out may not work all the time. So you have to know which is workable, which is not workable. Being psychologically flexible and accepting it for what it is can help you a lot.
Yes, sir. So our next question would be: what happens when a person has attempted to take their life but has not been treated for their condition later?
Hmm. Attempted to take their life but has not been treated for the condition later. There is a high possibility that the thoughts and behaviors of suicidal ideation and intent can come back. That is a very high possibility. It can definitely be back, and it can be even more detrimental than what they were initially than before. So getting the right help and getting yourself treated for those clinical conditions is very, very, very important, because there is always a high chance of regression to happen.
I'm sure everybody today will make sure they look out for the signs and ask for help whenever they need. So our next question would be: what does suicide contagion mean, and what can be done to prevent it?
Okay, suicide contagion is again, according to different schools of philosophies and different schools of psychology, there is an ongoing debate. A little bit here and little bit there, depending on whichever psychological school you come from. But most of the psychological professionals and mental health professional, we believe there is some kind of association. So what is suicide contagion? Suicide contagion is something that happens when a person is constantly being exposed to suicidal images, thoughts, or suicidal behavior from their family, peer group, through media accounts of suicide, or anything that can increase the suicidal intention or suicidal behavior when they are in stress. So you need to highlight I'm highlighting the word. So those who are in risk of suicide, right? Social. conduct through a lot of research has been proved that social conduct has been linked directly and indirectly to suicidal behavior, especially for again those who are at risk. So people who are at risk, who are being exposed to suicidal images through media or something, can affect them to go down the same path, particularly in young adolescents and young adults. There is a high possibility. There are a lot of researches by um, Madeline Gold, Millard, Steely. So you can just go Google them out at ncbi.com and you can get those resources available. So there are a lot of research that has been done on suicidal contagion, which shows an association to them. So how do I mitigate this? Well, we can't do much about direct exposure, right? It happens suddenly, you can't do anything. Indirect ones, like through media, especially through the media, the risk for suicidal contagion as a result of media reporting can be minimized a lot by factual and concise media reports of the suicide, rather than telling the elaborate things, victim blaming and doing stuff like that. You can reduce it through censorship and others, using a lot of triggers before you project a content, like giving a content warning or a trigger warning, can help in mitigating the problem. This is also applicable for the self. How is it applicable for the self? If you're talking to someone about some heavy stuff like suicide or death or something, at the beginning of the workshop also we did mention about trigger and content warning rights. Use them, right? It can help the person to move away or stop you from making that conversation. Set boundaries for yourself, right? Your mental health boundaries are very, very important for yourself, because again, at the end of the day, it is you who's taking that burden, right? So set those boundaries for yourself, not to listen to those heavy content when you yourself are not okay, right? This can also mean saying no to someone who's trying to vent out to you. Creating personal boundaries can make a lot of difference, right? All these things can potentially help in reducing suicide contagion. Hope
Yes,
I was able
surely
to
we'll make
answer
sure.
that question.
Yes,
Thank you.
we should be comfortable with what we hear and also see and look out for what we know. Now, we would like to take up some questions from the chat box from the live.
Right.
So, yeah, we'll have them displayed on the screen.
Mhm.
So, our first question is by Priyanshu. How do we improve communication so that no one feels left out? And how can we be a good listener?
How do we improve communication? Right. First, we need to develop a sense of empathy, right? You need to put yourself in the other person's shoes. Will you be able to, or will you be ready to throw a hurtful comment, or like shut down someone when would you like someone to shut yourself off, or when you are in distress? Definitely not. So developing a sense of empathy will definitely improve communication, right? And developing a sense of trust, right? Rapport building, right? You have to make that initiative. Yes, it is a little difficult to trust someone entirely, but trust and empathy is the only way of improving one's communication. Having a fallback mechanism where you can talk freely, right? So that can only happen when you have empathy and trust. And third, the most important of all, trust and empathy comes only and only when you are non-judgmental. So try not to be judgmental and try to, shut down someone. By being non-judgmental, you can gain these two qualities of empathy and trust building to improve. So that way you feel no that way no one feels left out. And to be a good listener also, these are the basic qualities: trust, listening actively and empathetically without any judgments. So that's it. Hope I was able to answer your question, Priyanshu.
Yes, now we'll have the next question. It is by Harris. Health insurance don't necessarily cover mental health. How does this impact the current situation?
Right. Again, this is a very subjective question. So in India, most of the healthcare does not cover mental health, but in abroad countries like UK, the Netherlands, Finland, and all, there are health insurances that cover mental health aspect. They give you free sessions with a specific allotted counselor or a mental health professional where people can improve their mental health. Right. How does this affect how does this impact the current situation? Well, it has a huge state to play, right? Most of the people from vulnerable communities, example from a very rural area, do not know even what mental health is. So you need to make some policies and make it inclusive that they are even aware, at least it reaches them directly over there, right? There are, for example, there are health camps and health insurances that covers in Tamil Nadu, at least it covers a lot of basic physical healthcare issues, right? So by including mental health, people can also develop a sense of awareness about them and can potentially change the states of the mental health quotient in India.
Yes, sir, surely. Now we'll have the
In
next
essence, it
question.
has to it has to be included, and most of us, through our advocacy and a lot of other organizations apart from us, are working towards policy level changes and making sure that this is being included. So that is
Changes are happening, but they're slow. But hopefully, we'll see a lot more
that.
coverage of mental health in the future. Now we'll have the next question.
Mhm.
It's how do we cope up with the feeling of being left out?
How do we cope with the feeling of being left out, right? Again, in my personal opinion, having a good set of network, a good set of friends, right, will never make you feel left out. If you are feeling left out from a social group, either it can mean that you're not in the right space, you're not in that safe space of comfort, and you need to actively seek out for groups that are positive about you, they are accepting about you. Either that, or you have to put in more effort. Usually it is the first one, but try to engage in conversations, make more initiatives, try to be there all, most of the time. But if you are still feeling left out, then it means that you are not with the right group of people, and you should shift and look for others.
Definitely, sir. We should always find a group where we belong and where we feel that we are connected with everybody.
True.
So,
On the
next
same note, I would
question.
like to add on something else also. When we are having such questions, sometimes it can be something even very deep rooted, that it is not at the surface level, right? We call this as unfinished businesses in psychological terms. So at that point of time, you need a little bit of a professional intervention to understand what is this causing you to feel left out. Is it something that you are internalizing it, or something suddenly that is coming out? So reaching out to a mental health professional is also very, very important if you are still finding it very difficult. And when we say therapy, or when we say mental health professional, people are like, oh, if I'm going to a mental health professional, it means I'm seriously messed up. It doesn't have to be. We mental health professionals, including myself and a lot of others, we are here as a friend. We are here for you to make that conversation. We are just here to give you conversations, right? So look at mental health professionals as a space where you can uh, talk safely and get the right amount of help, like your um, chatbots that you usually have it. So I'm a very old person. I use Messenger. So we have chatbots in Messenger. So, you say something and it gives you something, right? So think about mental health professionals as, a space for you to vent out or talk and try to process your emotion. It does not always have to be something very serious. It can be even for a simplest of things, like, okay, I'm not able to make decision about my life. Should I go to this college or that college? It can be very simple things like these. Talk to a professional. We are here for you, and we are here to support you. Don't make it like, okay, I have to, if I'm going to a professional, mental health professional, something should be seriously messed up with me. It doesn't have to be, and it is not. So please reach out to them.
Yes, sir, definitely. As an individual, always have to understand that mental health has been destigmatized. There is no stigma as such, or we shouldn't put ourselves down. We should reach out for help. I hope everybody listening today understands that. We all understand from the information that you are providing to us. Now we'll have the next question. What should we do if someone is reluctant to seeking help? Definitely,
Be
there
with
should
them.
be help.
Be with them, right? If they are very so in some of the crisis intervention, when when we are doing, we see clients being very reluctant to go reach out to a mental health professional. They do not want to do that. So at that point of time, staying with them and being with them, and trying to make sure that they are feeling okay is very, very important, right? And definitely you have to be persistent, right? They will say no, but you have to be persistent. Oh, just because, okay, they are very reluctant, I think, okay, I've done my job here, evaluated, I'm leaving. No, it cannot be like that. So you have to be persistent, until they take up that help that they require, right? Because again, suicide has different parts to it, right? Are only discussing at a very surface level. There are deeper levels to it. There are a lot of things associated with suicide. So a professional help is a must when a person is feeling suicidal, or when they are ideating actively, or when they are having a suicidal intention. So professional help is required at these points of times. So making sure and being persistent to push them towards taking that help is very, very important.
Yes, sir. We'll make sure to remember all the points and act on the facts that you had already told us, to look out for any changes in the intermediate friend circle or anybody who's around who needs help. Because somebody might be in need of help, and maybe we can realize that and help them. It might come a
True.
long way. So now we
Very
have
true.
come to the end of the session. Now I would like to call upon Priyanka to give us the vote of thanks.
Uh, Thank you, Yoshita. A very good evening to one and all present here. I, on behalf of Yrc-Vit, extend my heartfelt gratitude to all. Firstly, a big thank you to our guest speaker, Dr. Manoj Dinakaran, who has taken time out of his busy schedule to enlighten us with his words of wisdom. I would like to express sincere gratitude to our faculty coordinators for their constant support and guidance. An event like this cannot happen overnight, the wheels start rolling weeks ago. I would like to extend my gratitude to all those who have contributed to make this event a grand success. This event would have not been possible without you all. So, thank you again for having our backs. I cannot thank everyone enough for their involvement and participation in today's event. Once again, thank you all.